topic is Kubernetes namespace. So what is namespace? Namespace is the logical grouping of the resources within the cluster. Okay, let's go by the definition. What it is saying: Kubernetes use namespace to organize the objects within the cluster like folders holding the related resources. So it means that, okay, if you have a resources, so many resources within a cluster, you just segregate them within by creating a namespace. Like for example, here there is four namespace. One is default, second one is alpha, beta, and Charlie. Okay, so alpha has two resources, beta as well have two resources, Charlie has one, and Charlie does not have any, and default has one. Okay, so this is called namespaces. Okay, so how do we interact with these namespaces? So by default, kubectl, that is kube control command, interacts with the default namespaces. Okay, so there are commands, CLI commands are there. So we will see in detail what is kubectl get namespace, what is kubectl get pods all namespaces, or -a. So those things we will see in detail. Okay, but before we go in detail, let's understand this. What is this four namespaces we have mentioned here? Default namespace. Okay, so whenever a cluster is getting created, let me explain it here. Okay, so whenever there is a cluster, right? So whenever a cluster is there, and let's suppose you are creating a resources. Okay, so by default, those all resources will get created into the default namespace. Right, let's say here these are default namespace, these are getting created. Okay, so this will be called as default namespace. So if I write here default namespace, okay, and these are all the resources under the default. But there are some three more resources or namespaces are there. What are these? Let me draw it first. Okay, I think it is not working. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so one is default namespace, another is called kube node lease, another namespace is called kube proxy, kube public, another namespace is called kube system. Okay, so these are the four different namespaces, and what is their use? So let's say kube, let's start with the kube system. So all the API server, controller, scheduler, etc., all those information, all those pods or resources will be available under the kube system. Okay, what is kube public? So kube public means, so if anything, any resource we wanted to keep, be available, let it be available for public purpose or public accessibility, then we will create those resources here. Okay, then there is another resource called kube node lease. So what it does is it contains the information about the availability. Okay, so it contains the information about the availability of the nodes. Okay, so this is called these are the different four namespaces, and all together they will be found into the inside the cluster. Okay, so this is we have discussed now. I hope this is clear. What is namespace? So namespace is like a grouping of logical grouping of all these resources. Okay, and we interact with these namespaces using kubectl command. Okay, and by default inside a cluster there are four namespace: default, public, default, node lease, public, and kube system. Okay, and what is their use we have just now discussed. Now let's go and create one, and let's do the hands-on. Basically I wanted to show this particular example. Okay, so before we go and show the example, let us execute here. Okay, so if I wanted to execute a command called get kubectl get namespace. Okay, so it will tell how many namespaces are there currently. So it is telling that there are 4 namespaces by default, right? So default, node lease, public, and then system. Okay, and if we have to see within each namespace, okay, because namespace is nothing but a logical grouping of resources, right? That's what we have discussed. So that means if namespace is there, can we see the resources inside this? Yes, it should be, or it may not. Let us see one by one. So if I have to see cube ctl get all minus n, that is namespace, and if I'll mention default, so it is telling under the default namespace how many pods are running. So here you can see there is currently only one resource, that is my nginx. This is currently running. Okay, now let us see under the another namespace. Okay, so what we have just now see, we saw here inside the default namespace currently only my nginx this resource is currently only present. So these are all blank for now, you can consider. We will create it for the learning purpose. Okay, but now let's see what is available under this namespace. Okay, what is available under the cube node lease, cube public, and cube system. Okay, so if we go here, we just need to change the command. Instead of default, now we are going to check under the cube node lease. So you can see there is no resource found. So it means under the cube node lease namespace there is no resource. Now let us see under the cube public. Cube public, under cube public as well there is no resource. Now last one, let's see cube system, and then we will do next hands-on. So under the cube public namespace, we can see here there are so many pods available, or so many resources. I think 7 to 8 or 9 resources are present here. Okay, so what are these? One is API server, we have discussed. Under the cube system, API server will be there, controllers will be there, kube proxy will be there, scheduler will be there, provisioner and VPN kit controller is there, and DNS as well is available here. So these are all we have discussed. These are all resources will be available under the cube public. And how we will interact with all these pods and all, we have to interact with kubectl command. Okay, that's the interactive tool. Okay, so now what we have in our hand-on session. So what first one is default namespace we have shown. We just saw there is one pod available into it, that is my nginx. Okay, there is my nginx. This resource was already available. Okay, now let us create a new namespace altogether here, and we will learn it. Okay, we will create one new namespace here. Okay, so let's go to the command line here. Before I go to the creating of namespace, I have executed a command called kubectl get namespace, right? You can also write namespaces, or you can write ns in short. So all these three things will show the same result. Okay, so any of the three you can use. Okay, so as per our design, what we have in our whiteboard, we want to create a namespace. So let's create one namespace, kubectl create namespace. And what is the namespace name we wanted to keep? We wanted to keep demo namespace, right? So we will write here demo namespace. So it got created. Now let's execute the command and see how many namespaces are there. So it got created 4 seconds before. So now we have reached in this scenario. So there is a cluster. Inside a cluster there is default namespace and there is a demo namespace. We generally do not go and touch public, cube system and cube node lease, because For the development or managing the resources, this is not required. If you wanted to lease it, if you wanted to check the health status, you can do this. Public, if you wanted to keep any resources accessible to everyone, you can keep it here. And cube system is like as we told, right, just now we have seen what are the resources available under the cube system. It will have etcd controller, so those all things will be there. Okay, so for now, under the default, apart from default namespace, I have created another namespace called demo namespace, right? And we can see here as well, this demo namespace got created. Right now, if I have to see how many resources are there under the demo namespace currently, so we can just write here demo namespace. What command I'm executing? kubectl get all -n, that is namespace, and then what is my namespace name. So if you see, there is no namespace, currently there is no resource. Okay, so now if I wanted to execute and create one resource here, so I will write like kubectl, okay, then run demo pod 1, and then I'll mention like image nginx, and then so this will create it. But let's see if is it creating or not. So if I'm pressing an enter, so it is telling yes, it got created. That is very good. But where this got created? In this picture, if we have to see, this demo namespace got demo. What is the app name we created? Demo pod 1. Demo pod 1. So where this demo pod 1 got created? Because we have executed this command and it is telling that it is successfully executed as well, right? So let's see how we will see. We have to see under kubectl get all namespace, and then we will mention demo namespace. So you see, surprisingly, it is not created under this namespace, the demo namespace. Rather, it got created under the default namespace. So if you see here, demo pod 1 got created. So what it is trying to say is, when I executed a command, it got created in it got created inside the demo sorry, default namespace. Now if I have to create another pod, let's say pod 2, then question is how we will create inside the demo namespace, because that is what my requirement is. I wanted to create it under the demo namespace, this pod, right? So to achieve this, what we will do is, there is a concept called namespace. So while we are creating the namespace, right, while we are creating the pod, let's say demo name, this is already there, and I'll creating, right, demo pod 2, what image, this one. Then I'll mention here specifically, I'll mention namespace equals to, I wanted to create under namespace equals to demo namespace. Okay, demo namespace. Let's hit enter. This got created, and now if you will see, demo namespace in the default demo pod 2 is not available, but definitely it will be available under the demo namespace. You see, now there is one resource. Okay, so earlier it was showing like no resource found, but now it is saying like there is one resource. So as a developer or a QA person, when you are working, you might think like, okay, so then do I need to every time give this namespace set here? Because my team, if let's say if my team is alpha, right, if I work for alpha team, then do I need to every time write alpha, or every time I have to give the namespace name here? No. Basically what you can do is, you can change the current context, right? Then there comes a concept of current context. How you will see? So now if you see kubectl kubectl, then if you write config, then you write get context. So currently it is blank, right? So it is creating under the default namespace. Okay. Now, so if I have to change this, then what I will do is kubeconfig set context current. I wanted to keep under the namespace of which one? Demo namespace. Okay. So this got modified, and if you see execute the command, it is telling that if you execute the kubeconfig get context, if you execute, you will say the namespace got changed and it is demo namespace. Now if you execute pod 3, pod 4, pod 3, pod 4, pod 5, whatever, and even if you do not give the namespace, that means you are not telling which namespace I have to create. Since your current context is set to demo namespace, okay, all these pods which I am creating now, 4, 5, these all will get created under the where it will get created under the demo namespace. You see, pod 2, pod 3, pod 4, pod 5, these all pods we just now created, and they are all getting created under the demo namespace. So that is the benefit of setting the current context, right? So now for now I will change the current context back to default. I'll see where is this command I just executed. So default. So I have changed the current context to default. So now if I will execute any command, it will go and create under the default namespace. So let's say 45, it got created. So 45 should not be under the demo namespace. Yeah, you see, it is not there. So by default it is getting created under the default namespace. So you will be able to see 45 here is got created. Okay, so that is the concept here, how we change the current context as well, and as many as resources we can put either in whatever namespace we create under the cluster. Okay, so this we have got it. Now what let's understand what is imperative and declarative. So already we are doing imperative, means command based execution. So if any resources we are creating using the commands or CLI commands, that is imperative. If we have to do it through the any file base, then that is called declarative. Okay, so in the declarative means we will be using YAML based pipeline. Benefit we will get is like we will be able to have some logs, what resources, what time we are creating. We will be having some kind of audit. But in case of command line based, if once the command line interface is closed, you will lose the previous history, right? That is why we mostly use declarative way of creating a resources in the Kubernetes. Okay, so now let's say here let's execute this imperative we have learned. In imperative we have learned, after the default we have created another namespace. Same way you can create n number of namespaces and you can add the number of pods. Okay, and you can delete as well. So let's say I will show you how to delete as well. So I will write kubectl delete. If I wanted to delete pod, that is demo pod 45, so I will mention like this and I will hit enter. So if I wanted to delete any few more, then I'll put space and I'll mention like demo pod 1 as well. So if I will press enter, okay, so here you have to mention here specifically pod. Okay, so it is telling like demo pod 45 and pod 1 is getting deleted. So what I'm trying to say is you can create n number of namespaces and you can create a number of resources. Yes, there is definitely a limit you can set that we can learn in the upcoming sessions. So within a file itself you can do labeling of these namespaces and pods, and you can as well you can set the limits, basically how many pods or resources you wanted to create within the namespace. That as well you can do it, memory, CPU, all those things you can do, right? So here we can see it got deleted. So now let's execute this scenario using the declarative file based command. Okay, so there is namespace here, default namespace is there, and which will have app1, app2, app3, and then you have, what is this, you have one alpha namespace which have 2 resources, then you have Charlie which has 3 resources in it. Okay, so this we are trying to execute using the file based execution, that is declarative. Okay, so we will open the command line prompt and we have one nginx YAML. Let me explain you. So this file will have mainly 4 important sections to it. One is API version, right? Second one is kind, what kind of resource you are creating, right? Then what is the metadata, what is the name of that resource. Like say for example in this case we are creating a resource of kind pod. Okay, we are creating a pod. What will be the metadata, means what is the name, we will define the names. What is the name of that pod? It will be my app1. What are the labels we wanted to give, like tags we wanted to give, so that you can mention key value pair. And then you have a spec. So there are 4 important parameters like API version, kind, metadata and spec. Under the spec we are creating a container of a specific image. Okay, so this is the image we have created. Okay, so similarly what we are doing, we are creating another pod, my app2, and these are the labels, and this is the image, then my app3, and we are giving some labels to it, and this is the image. So let's try to execute this file. Okay, so what we will do is, if you wanted to execute it, okay, so currently how many resources are there? We can see in this resource there is only one resource is running under this default namespace. So if I wanted to execute kubectl apply on file base, so I will mention file, and then I will mention my file name, that is what is my file name here? If you see here, my nginx, right? So I will put m and press tab and hit enter, because I am in the same directory, it will execute the file immediately. So now you see it has created 3 pods. Where it got created, it should be in the default, right? So now in my default there are 3 pods or 3 resources running into it, app1, app2 and app3. So that is what we have seen. app1, app2 and app3 we have created. Now we wanted to create alpha and Charlie as well with resource 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. Okay, so for this I just created another namespace file here. So you see, this is the namespace called alpha, this is the namespace. What kind of resource I'm deploying now? It is a namespace. And what is the name? I'm deploying a Charlie. So alpha and Charlie, these 2 namespaces I'm deploying. And under the alpha, same example which we have seen in the my nginx, I'm deploying a pod. So this is my pod name 1. Okay, under the namespace. So this is important. So pod alpha 1, this pod is getting deployed under the namespace. So under the metadata only name and namespace should be mentioned. Okay, then this is again we have seen spec, under the spec which container image we are using. Then we are creating another pod under the same namespace. Then this is Charlie pod 1 under the Charlie namespace, Charlie 2 and Charlie 3 under the Charlie namespace. Now let's execute this particular command. Okay, so what we will do, we will write kubectl, then apply -f, and then what is my file name? It is alpha charlie.yaml. So now if I will hit enter, what it will do is, you see it has created 2 namespace, 2 pods, and 3 pods in Charlie. Now let us see, we'll quickly check as well. So I wanted to check out under the default already we know. So I wanted to check under the alpha. So enter the alpha. Now you see there are 2 resources got created, and under the Charlie there are 3 pods got created. So we have achieved this scenario, right, using the declarative. Okay, now if we want to add another one, you can simply add it like kubectl run my nginx. Okay, now let's say you wanted to add like pod alpha 3, this pod you wanted to add, and you wanted to give image as nginx. Okay, and under which namespace you wanted to give it under alpha. So if you don't wanted to give the namespace here explicitly while working with alpha namespace, what I have just in the previous some time back I have told is you can change the current context. Because current context here is default, and I wanted to create under the alpha, that is why I am mentioning a namespace here. Okay, otherwise I would not have mentioned here. Okay, so what it is showing is, it is telling an error here that you have not executed kubectl, that is a typo error, it got created. And now if you will see alpha, there will be 3 namespaces, I mean 3 pods will be available here, right? So this is all about the namespaces and why we use namespaces. Okay, and in the last, if I have to tell, I will just quickly give like how we can delete the namespace as well. So kubectl get all get ns. Let's see first how many namespaces are there. Okay, so there are alpha, Charlie, and demo namespace. These 3 namespaces I have created. So I can do very well like kubectl, okay, delete, then namespace, and I can mention alpha, Charlie, and default I cannot do, right? So I can mention here demo namespace. So these 3 resources I have created, alpha, Charlie, and demo namespace. I can hit enter, and these 3 will be deleted. So once these 3 namespaces will be deleted, what does it means is all the resources under these namespaces will also get deleted, right? So this is all about the namespace. I hope you have enjoyed the session and you have some takeaway from it. So we'll meet you in the next session. Thank you guys. Have a great day.